Good fun out there, guys. We are here for as you said, mate. This is you love the best location in Australia. Do we know where the is?
The can be anywhere. They are purposely the so that they can be all inclusive, because we're definitely not Redcliffe, even though KO Stadium is at Redcliffe, but we're the. I don't know whether that's the Sunshine Coast, the South Queensland Crushers, or what, but the are here to stay, and they are therefore the second last alphabetical team in our reviews.
Oh, you and Mark going through your alphabeticals and doing it that way. It's funny. I just pick random teams if it was me to do it, but that's why you and I work, mate. We operate very differently, and we work great together in this team. But mate, it's been a wild day. I suppose it's coming out. This will be Friday morning. We've just uploaded the Roosters one, and during that time, we've had a few players, in different positions, and we look like we some people are in the back end, and these fantasy people in the private group, they're pretty wacko, aren't they? Just they just want to see those prices, mate. They just want to start making their team. It's a fun time, isn't it?
Oh, they're pretty keen. They've already been trying to break in and look at prices and all sorts of things. But by the time, given how close it seems, by the time you see this, there's a solid chance it'll be out. So Thursday evening, Friday morning is what they were kind of thinking from the
Okay.
last update. So I guess we'll find out.
Well, mate, from these players, Tom Gilbert was the one that seems to that we have a price on. He's the only one so far at 500k.
Yeah. So Gilbert's very interesting. I have him at prop here because I just don't know how to move the team around to incorporate Max Plath,
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Plath was great at lock and hooker. Jerry Marshall King's back now. So what do? I reckon there's a solid chance that Plath splits for lock and the hooker minutes, and Marshall King might drop a few more minutes than that if that it does turn out that way. But yeah, the only way at the moment to give Plath and Jeremy Marshall King a lot of minutes is to put Gilbert at prop or bench playing a lot of minutes or something. So there's a
Mm.
solid chance he does better than 42.5 that I've got him there. Um, but yeah, as it stands, there's at least a little bit of value there, given that 500k is not a bad price for somebody who's been off with an injury discount.
Yeah, we've got there. He made average 47 and a half in 2023 in his first year at the Dolphins. We need to start saying Dolphins because some people might not know what's going on with that whole thing, but we'll have a laugh about it, mate. But a 47 and a half puts him, very very close to that 650 mark. Just a tick under that if we're looking at today's prices. So if he can get back to that top tier spot, then that would be great. But he's coming off two really pretty poor injuries, mate, and hasn't played a lot of footy. And similar to Campbell Graham, it's been a couple of tough years, and I think you'd just be happy to get it back on the park. And with how well Plath went at 13, I see it in a similar mode to you, where there's probably one stint at a genuine prop and a second stint of that 20 minutes there if you're taking that 20 from Plath, which I think is in a full strength side. I don't think we need to push Plath, and I think if they're missing a couple, then he can push for the 70 and 80 minute games, Plathy boy. So in this setup here, then 30 minutes at prop and 20 minutes on at 13 makes a lot of sense in my book with guys like Kenny Bromwich and Felice Kafusi likely to be moving into that sort of middle rotation in their later years.
Yeah, definitely. And Gilbert's somebody who can also play edge if needed as well.
True.
So there's going to be minutes around for him. It's just how much does he play straight up after such a long layoff? Like him, Pappenhausen, and Dewey all had like 16 months where they barely played anything or none at all. So it's been a while. I'm really keen to see him back, though. I've missed him.
And there's lots of minutes available. This is probably the first team where you can't lock down one of the edge guys to definitely play 80. That's where you've got him,
Mm.
tick under that on both. And then, to have a 13 that is probably sitting around the 60 mark is fairly normal. You've got Jerry Marshall King, who I think is one of their more important players. They'll want him on there as much as possible, whether that's, somewhere near that 70 mark, or if he'll pump at 80 in certain weeks as well. there's space for minutes, and without Flegler there, we saw last year that's where Plath was able to come in and have lots of value. There were times last year with Jared Wallace and Mark Nichols and these types of guys had stretches where they were really dominant and had value. So they're a team where something's going to happen. It may just be with Finifuaki and Lemuelu, the guys that do end up with some of that value in this side, but there's also going to be a time period where Tom Gilbert is relevant as well, whether it's from round one or round three, or it's a little bit later once he gets his footing and his minutes go up as well. So this really needs to be a team that you have to keep an eye out on, in my opinion. You've got some other guys in there with Isaiah Katoa, who should naturally improve. You've got Asako coming off a much lesser, he was up, he hit a 50 average the year before. Hamar's only going to improve. So it's a pretty interesting side. And you got guys like Daniel Saifidi as well, who can be dominant. So there's definitely minutes to go around, and let's see if we can find some value in here in this position, mate. But let's go through those two edges. I think they're really important. And Lemuelu just a lot of injuries last year, didn't he? Where do you see him this year? Is there improvement in him?
I think there is because we remember that season before when he was that absolutely brilliant 80-minute edge we could chuck in our centres of scoring low 40s, 45. And that's what we can get out of him, but then it was very disrupted and didn't really happen. So I've split the difference and put him at about a low 40s average for now in case there's also some movement because, I mean, probably not going to play 80 all the time with just how this team's going to work itself out.
Hmm.
But yeah, there's a strong possibility that if he's that guy that locks down that 80 with Fini Fuyaki being the up and coming guy, still needing to learn a few more things and build into his body,
Hmm.
there's a world where Lemuelu goes more than 3 or 4 points of value and becomes sort of a discount keeper type of guy. But it's hard to just nail that down from round one. Hey,
Yeah. Yeah, and as you've got there, I've got him outscoring Finn. Just seems to be a much nicer fantasy player at this point in his career. And with Gilbert, as you said, he might be able to play some edge as well. Unsure how that's going to shake out with these guys. And I suppose with Finn at a 29.4 average and likely to come in at that price, probably a little bit of a safer pick, knowing that we haven't seen injuries from him yet, which is good as well in his young career. But had some moments last year for the Cows where he'd pick up a 40 plus, which was great for owners. But then PPM wise, wasn't too terrific, was it? As you saw with Lemuelu as well, with that point, close to that 0.55 mark.
yeah, the saying that 80-minute edges should score 40 probably applies here. He doesn't have to score much more than that to be really valuable. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to do that early on, but he's going to have value. He's going to have some. Maybe he builds into that, has a couple of big games where he moves up an extra 30, 40K than you were thinking before middling around, and then you sell him off at that peak price. He's going to be one, as you said, with the Dolphins. You're going to have to really keep an eye on them week to week and what's happening, where their break evens are, where their prices are, because you could really squeeze some good value out of him. But if you wait a couple of weeks because there's other issues in your team, maybe you only get 80K out of him instead of like 120 or 130.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably still feels similar to last year. Like you got him at a cheaper price last year. This year he's up a bit, but he just doesn't feel like a guy that'll ruin your season or
Hmm.
he'll get too far away from you. As you said, you might miss out on 40K. And if, as you got there in the description as well, if we somehow get him playing 80 minutes, then yeah, it's a clear sort of 10
Killer.
points or so, which would be awesome. But yeah, I think starting with would be fine. I think leaving him out would be completely fine as well if there's other people at that price point that you might be interested in for sure. Unless we do see something from him in the preseason, but yeah, interesting pick for sure. I think he'll be fairly highly owned, but yeah, won't kill people that
Hmm.
don't own him for sure. Interesting. And then Gilbert at 500K. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. But let's go to Daniel Saifidi then. He'll be the other starting prop and comes over from the Knights. It was a tale of two halves last year, wasn't it? First part of the season was he got so cheap and then had a much improved second half of the season.
Yeah, it's always a interesting battle to see which Saifidi twin comes out on top. because they
True.
often end up with a similar average or a similar price, but they swing and seesaw depending on who's starting that for the couple of months or not. But
Mm.
yeah, so Daniel Saifidi was down as low as 366 in round 17 last year and finished over 500. So I think he can definitely improve from where he is. It's just that also with Gilbert returning, Plath doing well, how much does he get? I think he's got like a little bit, but probably not enough to really interest me with a lot of value in the mids going around.
Yeah, another thing that just came to my mind as well is like they're a team that are fairly low on depth. So if they're on depth in like really good players, I should say, at this point in their careers, a lot of youngsters, or there's the aging superstar forwards in Bromwich, and we lose Jesse this year, replaced by Daniel, Jesse Bromwich there. And you got Felice Kafusi, so the minutes aren't crazy, but there's guys like Oren Keeley, who's just recovered from his injury that he picked up, and he played some time on that edge as well last year, and he's a promising young player. He looked pretty good last year at times, so it does seem just very clearly a team that once an injury comes, the value's just going to flow in. But it could be, again, could be there from round one with Saifidi as well. Maybe you just need to change the scenery, and that could do the trick. But it would be a scary one to jump into at a pretty awkward mid-range price, when we know that he has that downside to get to 366, So the Finns, bye period. They get all the way through to round 12, which is the first major buy, which means as well, I think in my opinion, you could easily just see how it plays out for a couple of these guys and look to purchase around that sort of Tigers, Brisbane, Gold Coast in round 3, 4, 5. You could start with them easily and hold them for a long time. They have that round 13 is the first minor buy, and then they're clear all the way until round 18 before 18 and 21 too very quickly. Very interesting side, mate. I do think they'll be a lot more relevant for fantasy than what people may think.
Yeah, well, there's only a few colors here and a couple of have a look, but that have a look means that there'll probably be some shifting because we're not sure what's happening. And then yeah, then there's the one that we do know about. That's the best pure center season in history, right? Surely no one's hit 55. I don't even think Gagai's gone that high.
Yeah, he's got close to that 50 mark, but the 55, that end of the season was spectacular, wasn't it? And he just in a team that wasn't going very well, they couldn't tackle him.
It was great. He had an injury and was off for a little bit, came back, had two quiet weeks, and then hit a 90. And including that game for the rest of the season, he was scoring Payne Haas levels. He was averaging 61. Like
From that
that's
position.
that's crazy. That's outscoring all your wing fullbacks as a
Yeah.
center. So yeah, he's going to be very, very expensive, and you shouldn't buy him round one. I'd say like there's only down in an early season when the backs don't score many points. But I reckon he's a very, very strong option to get in your team, maybe a little earlier than you might think, because
Yeah.
like it's not many people are going to have him.
No, and when he's not playing Origin like that setup through here, moving your
Mm.
thing around. That setup through that section, missing one game for a top tier guy in the position, it's absolute gold through that time. So the hope would maybe you can get him at like down to like a 48 price and climb in from there, because coming in at 55 is tough. And it's, you look at other guys in that center, and well, let's say more the wing fullbacks, and you're looking at guys like Latrell, Teddy. You said there's 55 in that last video. They're expensive guys to climb into, but 60 for Latrell. But it could definitely pay off at certain times. And you get the mids for
Mm.
consistency, but you get these types of guys for that stretch of 4 games where they go for 75, which we know that Herbie has that upside to do, which is really cool for sure. And then
Yeah,
mate,
there's not many centers that can score 90, 90, and 110 in a season. That's very, very good ceiling.
and in pretty short succession as well. Jeremy Marshall King, he's an interesting one. 44 is the price point. You've got him up there at 48.75. Talk us through him, and if we can get him for 80 minutes this year, which is a decent chance. He's very, very important to them. When he goes down, they lose games. So if we get him near 80 minutes, is he someone that people could have a play at?
Yeah, definitely. He's the one thing about him is that he kind of always seems to be about here, and then something happens. Well, last year was injury, but if he manages to stay on the field and do well, he's a good playmaker. He doesn't quite have the base of the elite guys, but he's got pretty good attack, and he makes up for that. So there's a very solid chance that he can hit about a 50 average and be a really solid hooker option for about like 4 or 5 points discount.
Yeah. It's an interesting one to me, like looking at this side and when he has scored well, it's around really strong, tough, helpful, defensive forwards. And like losing Flegler early last year just brought them really yeah, and Gilbert like brought that middle starch right down and we've seen with some teams, like if you're looking at Robson, for example, with the Cows, that when the Cows aren't playing very well, the missed tackles through the middle just go through the roof, and that's what you do see with guys like Marshall King and in the middle. So do have a look at squads that have other middles around them that can be very, very helpful. And if they defend in a line and they're not scattered, so that's where little things like that for the hooking position when you're looking at sort of 5 to 7 missed tackles a game for a lot of these guys, and it's a game changer between averaging 45 and a 55, 60, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Like you've got guys like Reed Marnie who tackle their heart out and then get busted halfway through the season. I think he's just been that kind of guy who comes out strong, averages 55, and then kind of is a bit stiff and sore and a bit worn down. There's a few other forwards not supporting him as well, and then he drops off at the end of the year. So
Mm.
it it could be a good option to buy him early when he's nice and fresh and making tackles and everybody's there and supporting him. If it looks like he's going to get that really good big role, but yeah, so it'll have to wait and see how they go with Plath versus Jeremy Marshall King versus Gilbert versus, well, they've got a couple of options. It's not quite Roosters esque, but they do have a little bit of move.
Yeah, and hopefully it stays the same this year because they just continue to get big injuries from early on enough in the season. I really hope Flegler can come back because he was awesome at the beginning of that, and hopefully his nerves and everything are all good. Hammer 44 last year. Do we see more of the same from him?
I think so. He's like Isako probably. He's going to be relevant in stretches when he just tears up a game and wins the match for them. He's very, very dangerous like that. Him and Herbie were great partners in crime, and Herbie scored a lot of points. Hammer has been pretty relevant and sort of thereabouts in the in the centre position, but not quite elite because he'll probably have the centre duel again, right? Like he played enough games there when Fuller was there and other players were out. Or you reckon he just stays at wing fullback?
Yeah, it feels like he should stay there. He's so talented, and a team like this, you need to keep him in the game at all times. Osako, mate, 38 last year after that 50. You've got him at 41.6. Do we just need this team to be a lot better to get him back near that 50, or with the little bit of a video and picture content we've seen from training, Herbie potentially on that right hand side, does that help or hinder him with Mr. Glue Hands?
Or yeah, it depends if that he's going to get the ball. So the year that he scored 50, he had quite a selection of centres rotate through there, including Tavare, who just like he'd break through the line because he's a unit, and then Isaka would sometimes score off the back of that. He had a different partner there last year in Amarillo. So if Herbie's there, it'll be different again, and it'll have to remain to be seen. But yeah, if Herbie's a ball hog, does it all himself, maybe he goes down instead of up.
Yeah. It did just feel like it was very much that year. It was, the Waz killing it down that right hand side, and it was DWZ going nuts for that year, and then it was also the Dolphins going crazy down that right hand side as well because Averillo was there that year and for the most part, and he still played much better. But the big change was Farnworth and Bostock, on that left hand side. Really, their growth and Herbie's surge into the best center in the game fantasy wise anyway. And Bostock was really, really nice. A big rangy guy that, yeah, was solid in the air and good at finishing. Like that left hand side just became more relevant, didn't it? And Osako maybe lost a little bit of confidence on that. He didn't look like he had the same vigor on the ball back, and there was some errors and stuff. Hey, it was a interesting year for him with guys like Osako. Is it just a try and get them at like a 33 or 34, and if the team's going pretty well, then would you trust that? Could you still trust him at like a 35?
Yeah, it's a gut read to be honest. Like if you see the Dolphins doing well or expected to do well on a run when somebody returns, when you're picking guys who aren't necessarily keepers, especially in the outside backs, it's a really risky tactic, but one that can pay off very, very well. So when Marzu went nuclear, um, he was great, but you kind of see that that was happening first, and that the role was there for him, and that he was going to get that ball. And even guys like Bradman Best didn't go well, and then worked into it and did well, and then all of that happened on that side. So I think you need to trust that the role will be what you think it is in order to get back to it. Otherwise, you might just buy somebody who's going to sit at that low price, which would be a real shocking trade to sort of make and put you in a bit of a hole.
Yeah. And just as you're talking there, just thinking of wingers when we look at these spreadsheets and how often are we seeing guys close to that 40 mark? It's Dom Young and Tupu who are really, really good wingers. They're just a tick over 40. You go to the Dragons and you're looking at some guys there at mid 30s, low 30s. South Sydney, we're going to have a couple of cheaper guys, but they find it tough to sit above the 30s and 40s. You go to a really good team, same deal. You've got an absolute superstar in To'o, but then it's 30s and 40s again in that low range. So it's a it's an interesting spot, and it's one that we can get a bit caught up in, I think, as well, especially the wingers, because in that wing fullback slot we want to get as many fullbacks as we can, and these wingers they can just go without the footy at times, aren't they? Unless they're a top tier guy and have done it week year after year, like the To'os and these kind of guys. It's gonna be can be very dependent on which side they go that year. Hey, it's such a gamble.
Very much so. And you want somebody that has the ball as much as possible outside of that and is getting good run meters and opportunity to do that. So, other than Will Warbrick basically being a prop for the Storm at times, if you're running a lot of meters, you're probably having a lot more chance in attack as well. And
Yeah,
even Warbrick in that role scored a lot of tries last year.
yeah, but just a gun team, isn't it? Where you don't have that guarantee from the Finns. Who made the halves to finish off? It's Nikorima and Katoa most likely in your eyes. My eyes, I think too. We got Sean O'Sullivan that just fell completely out of favour last year and will come in very, very cheap as well. But do we see it just going as is, and do you see any value in any of these guys across the season?
Not so much. I think Qatar needs to be bigger, or at least miss less tackles and break a few more in order to move up to that next tier of borderline 50 type of guy.
Hmm.
I think he's going to sit at where he's going to sit. If they do take Cody Nikarima out and put him on bench instead of, say, a Kurt Donahue, that could be interesting. Probably drops Katoa a little bit with O'Sullivan's kicking ability. Then maybe O'Sullivan gets a bit of value, but that's probably the only way I see there being much going on in that halves position, because I mean that's what they did all the last year. And if we project them to do the same this year, well, what's the change? What's the value?
Yeah, yeah. Without it being a guess, I suppose, or a hope. Cross the fingers. With a new coach, we should probably see the odd change, and obviously, I suppose when you go assistant coach into the coaching sphere, like there will be a lot of your sort of thoughts that would sit in this team already. But the question is, how different is he going to be to Wayne? And we know how important he is as a coach in this league and what he can do. So it could be a little bit worrisome how they're going to go to begin the year. But someone like Tom Gilbert with that experience in Origin, and Hammer just continuing to grow. You got Herbie in there. You got a young, really good half. They've got some experience in the middles, obviously with Gilbert returning, but Daniel Saifidi. Losing Jesse, bringing Daniel is a little bit less, K's on the legs, you should say. Having a fresh Jeremy Marshall King, some good outside, edge talent. There's still a chance for them to come out and do well, but potentially a few more questions than answers, which is why you don't have any green in here, mate, and just the one yellow, which makes complete sense because he's coming over into a starting role after not being a starter. So I think you've got a pretty well spot on, mate. And what do you reckon we leave the Tigers analysis until we actually have the prices? Because we might have thought of six, seven, eight relevant guys in that team, don't we?
Yeah, well, interesting on the prices. Everybody should know by tomorrow morning, probably. But if it isn't, looks like Footy Stats has just been able to scrape the data for it now. So looks like the prices and percentages have finally changed there. So go and have a stab at that
Ah,
as well.
okay. Well, yeah, we're doing this Thursday night, so you'll be able to check that all out if you're super keen. But if you're waiting until the app is ready. It looks like the app will be ready at the back end of Jan, but jump on the desktop or on Safari or whatever on your phone and get around it. And a big thank you to all you guys for being here pre-game opening. I know it's been a long wait, but big thanks to you all for being here, guys. And all the private group information is in the description below. I'm seeing a lot of different private group things coming out from lots of different creators around. So if you do decide to join us, then I do really appreciate that and get involved with the subscription button. I heard there, you can be really good mates with it and that notification bell as well. So thanks everyone for this one, and we'll finish things off once all the prices are out with the Tigers.